Hello students, today we are going to start our second chapter from your book Hornbill, and the name of the chapter is We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together by Gordon Cook and Alan East. This story is written by two writers, Gordon Cook and Alan East. Let us begin the introduction first. This story is about a 37 years old businessman who is the narrator of the story. He has a wife named Mary and two children, Jonathan aged 6 and Suzanne aged 7. He and his wife both dream of a voyage around the world on their ship Wave Walker. Wave Walker is the name of their ship, which is a 23-meter long, 30-ton wooden hull just like that of the famous Captain James Cook. The whole family started sailing from Plymouth, England on July 1976. The initial phase of the 3-year-long journey was from Africa to Cape Town. It was pleasant. While heading east, along with two newly hired crewmen, strong waves hit them and their survival became a question. The story tells us about how they fought each day and survived till the end. Now let us begin our chapter without wasting time. In July 1976, my wife Mary, son Jonathan 6, daughter Suzanne 7 and I set sail from Plymouth, England to replicate the round-the-world voyage made 200 years earlier by Captain James Cook. For the longest time, Mary and I, a 37 years old businessman, had dreamed of sailing in the wake of the famous explorer, and for the past 16 years, we had spent all our leisure time honing our seafaring skills in British waters. Our boat, Wave Walker, a 23-meter, 30-ton wooden hulled beauty, had been professionally built, and we had spent months fitting it out and testing it in the roughest weather we could find. In this paragraph, voyage, it means a long journey by sea. Leisure, it means free time. Honing, it means sharpen or improving. Seafaring, it means regularly traveling by sea. Honing our seafaring skills, it means improving the skills required to travel by sea. Wooden hulled, it means a watertight body of a ship. In this paragraph, the narrator, who is 37 years old businessman, along with his wife Mary and two children, Jonathan, who is 6 years old, and Suzanne, who is 7 years old, went on a voyage on their ship in July 1976. They started from Plymouth, England. They wanted to complete the sea trip around the world just like the one that had been completed 200 years ago by the famous Captain James Cook. The narrator and his wife spent 16 years improving their seafaring skills. They got a ship built professionally, a 23-meter long, 30-ton heavy wooden hull called Wave Walker. They took several months to test it in the roughest of weathers. Now the next paragraph. The first leg of our planned 3-year, 1 lakh and 5,000 kilometer journey passed pleasantly as we sailed down the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. There, before heading east, we took on two crewmen, American Larry Vigil and Swiss Herb Sigler, to help us tackle one of the world's roughest seas, the Southern Indian Ocean. On our second day out of Cape Town, we began to encounter strong gales. For the next few weeks, they blew continuously. Gales did not worry me, but the size of the waves was alarming, up to 15 meters as high as our main mast. In this paragraph, gales, it means a very strong wind. Mast, it means a tall upright structure on a boat or a ship. In this paragraph, the initial phase of the 3-year-long journey of 1 lakh and 5,000 kilometers passed pleasantly. They sailed down the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. The narrator hired two crewmen before heading towards the east to tackle the roughest sea, the Southern Indian Ocean. Their names were Larry Vigil, an American, and Herb Sigler, a Swiss. On the second day in Cape Town, they encountered a strong wind which continued for several weeks. A strong wind was not a problem, but 15-meter high waves, which were the height of the mast, worried the narrator. Now the next paragraph. December 25th found us 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. Despite atrocious weather, we had a wonderful holiday complete with a Christmas tree. New Year's Day showed no improvement in the weather, but we reasoned that it had to change soon. And it did change for the worst. At dawn, on January 2nd, the waves were gigantic. We were sailing with only a small storm jib and were still making 8 knots. As the ship rose to the top of each wave, we could see endless, enormous seas rolling towards us, and the screaming of the wind and spray was painful to the ears. To slow the boat down, we dropped the storm jib and lashed a heavy mooring rope in a loop across the stern. Then we double-lashed everything, went through our life raft drill, attached lifelines, donned oilskins and life jackets and waited. In this paragraph, atrocious it means bad, of a very poor quality. Gigantic it means huge or of a big size. Jib it means a triangular staysail set forward the mast in a ship. Knots it means a unit of speed equal to 1 nautical mile per hour. It is used especially of ships, aircraft or winds. Enormous it means a very large size. Laced it means to hit with a lot of force. Mooring it means the ropes, chains or anchors. Loop it means a shape produced that bends round and crosses. It means bent. Stern it means the back part of a ship or a boat. Donned it means put on or wore. Oilskins it means heavy cotton cloth waterproofed with oil. In this paragraph, on December 25th, they had travelled 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. They celebrated Christmas together despite the bad weather. The weather remained the same till New Year's Day, but they hoped for it to change soon. The weather conditions worsened. On the early morning of January 2nd, the waves were very huge. They were sailing with a small storm jib at a speed of height knots. When the ship was sailing with the huge waves, they could see the huge sea in front of them. The noise of the waves and strong winds was painful for the ears. They dropped the storm jib to slow down the ship and hit a heavy mooring rope across the back part of the ship in a loop. They lashed everything with double force. They put on their oilskins and life jackets, attached lifelines and went through the life raft drills and waited. Now the next paragraph. The first indication of impending disaster came at about 6 p.m. with an ominous silence. The wind dropped and the sky immediately grew dark. Then came a growing roar and an enormous cloud towered aft of the ship. With horror, I realized that it was not a cloud but a wave like no other I had ever seen. It appeared perfectly vertical and almost twice the height of the other waves, with a frightful breaking crest. In this paragraph, impending it means about to happen. Ominous silence it means unpleasant or threatening silence. Aft it means near the stern of the ship. Frightful it means very unpleasant or shocking. Crest it means reach the top of a wave. In this paragraph, around 6 p.m., an unpleasant silence rolled over It was an indication of a disaster which was about to happen. The wind suddenly dropped and the sky was darker with heavy clouds. A huge cloud was coming towards the stern of the ship, but later the narrator realized it was a huge wave. The wave was perfectly vertical and it was twice the height of the previous waves they show, with the top of the wave looking unpleasant due to its height. Now the next paragraph. The roar increased to a thunder as the stern moved up the face of the wave, and for a moment I thought we might ride over it. But then a tremendous explosion shook the deck. A torrent of green and white water broke over the ship. My head smashed into the wheel and I was aware of flying overboard and sinking below the waves. I accepted my approaching death, and as I was losing consciousness, I felt quite peaceful. In this paragraph, tremendous, it means very great in amount. Shook, it means it shake, vibrate. Deck, it means a floor of a ship. Torrent, it means a fast moving stream of water. Smashed, it means shattered or violently broken. In this paragraph, the thunder increased and the wave moved the stern up. They thought that it would not do any damage, but a huge explosion vibrated the deck. A strong moving stream of green and white water broke over the ship. The narrators had smashed in the wheel of the ship. He flew overboard and sank below the waves. He accepted that his death was approaching and started losing consciousness. He felt quite peaceful. Now the next paragraph. Unexpectedly, my head popped out of the water. A few meters away, Wave Walker was near capsizing, her mast almost horizontal. Then a wave hurled her upright. My lifeline jerked taut. I grabbed the guard's rails and sailed through the air into Wave Walker's main boom. Subsequent waves tossed me around the deck like a rag doll. My left ribs cracked, my mouth filled with blood and broken teeth. Somehow I found the wheel lined up the stern for the next wave and hung on. Water everywhere. I could feel that the ship had water below, but I dared not abandon the wheel to investigate. Suddenly, the front hatch was thrown open and Mary appeared. "We are sinking," she screamed. "The deck are smashed. We are full of water." "Take the wheel," I shouted as I scrambled for the hatch. In this paragraph, capsizing, it means be overturned in the water. Hurled, it means throw with a great force. Taut, it means stretched or pulled tightly. Boom, it means pole that controls the angle and shape of the sail. Scrambled, it means climbed. Hatch, it means door. In this paragraph, the narrators had popped out of water, come out of water. The ship was about to overturn, but a wave turned her upright. His lifeline jacket was stretched. He grabbed the guard rails and sailed to the ship's main pole. The waves tossed him around the deck. He was injured as his left ribs cracked, his mouth filled with blood, and he had a broken tooth. He found the wheel, lined the stern for the next wave, and waited. There was water everywhere. The narrator could feel water below the ship, but he didn't leave the wheel alone. Suddenly, the front door opened, and his wife Mary came screaming that they were sinking. She said, "The decks are smashed. We are full of water." The narrator handed her the wheel and climbed towards the door. Now the next paragraph. Larry and Herb were pumping like madmen. Broken timbers hung at crazy angles. The whole starboard side bulged inwards. Clothes, crockery, jars, tins, and toys sloshed about in deep water. I half swam, half crawled into the children's cabin. Are you all right? I asked. Yes, they answered from an upper bunk. But my head hurts a bit, said Shue. Shue here means Suzanne, pointing to a big bump above her eyes. I had no time to worry about bumped heads. After finding a hammer, screw, and canvas, I struggled back on deck. With the starboard side based open, we were taking water with each wave that broke over us. If I couldn't make some repairs, we would surely sink. In this paragraph, timbers, it means wood board used in building of a ship. Starboard, it means side of a ship which is on the right side when one is facing forward. Bulged, it means swollen. Sloshed, it means move through liquid with a splashing sound. Based, it means strike hard or hit. In this paragraph, the crewmen Larry and Herb were pumping the water very fast. The timbers of the ship were broken and were hanging badly. The starboard of the ship had sunk. Clothes, crockery, jars, tins, and toys were roaming around in deep water. The narrator swam and crawled to the children's cabin and asked the children whether they were all right. The children replied yes. Shue, Suzanne, his daughter, complained about a big bump on her head. The narrator didn't pay much attention to it as his major concern was to save them. The narrator found screws, hammer, and canvas. He went back to the deck. The broken starboard side was letting so much water in. If the narrator could not fix the problem, they would all sink in the sea. Now the next paragraph. Somehow I managed to stretch canvas and secure waterproof hatch covers across the gaping holes. Some water continued to stream below, but most of it was now being deflected over the side. More problems arose when our hand pumps started to block off with the debris floating around the cabins and the electric pump short circuited. The water level rose threateningly. Back on the deck, I found that our 2 spare hand pumps had been wrenched overboard, along with the forestay sail, the jib, the dinghies, and the main anchor. Then I remember we had another electric pump under the chartroom floor. I connected it to an outpipe and was thankful to find that it worked. In this paragraphs, deflected it means turned aside. Canvas it means a strong unbleached cloth. Debris it means rubbish, the things. Wrenched it means pull suddenly or removed. Forestay it means a rope to support ship's foremast. Dinghies it means a small boat for recreation with master or sail. In this paragraph, the narrator stretched the canvas cloth and secured the waterproof hatch which covered the gaping holes. Some water streamed below and some was now deflected over the other side. The hand pump was blocked as rubbish was floating around the cabins and entered it. The electric pump short circuited. As the water level rose, the narrator found 2 hand pumps had been removed along with a rope, jib, a small boat, and the main anchor. He found another electric pump under the chartroom. He connected it to an outpipe and it started working. Now the next paragraph. The night dragged on with an endless, bitterly cold routine of pumping, steering and working the radio. We were getting no replies to our mayday calls, which was not surprising in this remote corner of the world. Shoes had swollen alarmingly. She had two enormous black eyes, and now she showed us a deep cut on her arm. When I asked why she hadn't made more of her injuries before this, she replied, I didn't want to worry you when you were trying to save us all. In this paragraph, mayday calls, it means words, it's a words used to signal ship struck in a disastrous situation through radio. In this paragraph, the whole night was about the endless routine of pumping out the water, steering the wheel and working the radio. There were no replies to their signals sent over the radio as they were in the remotest part of the world. Shu's head was now more swollen and she had two black eyes with a deep cut in her arm. When upon being asked why she didn't tell him about her injuries earlier, she said that she didn't want to worry him as he was trying to save all of them. Now the next paragraph. By morning on January 3rd, the pumps had the water level sufficiently under control for us to take 2 hours rest in rotation. But we still had a tremendous leak somewhere below the waterline, and on checking, I found that nearly all the boats' main rib frames were smashed down to the keel. In fact, there was nothing holding up a whole section of the starboard hull except a few cupboard partitions. We had survived for 15 hours since the wave hit, but Wave Walker wouldn't hold together long enough for us to reach Australia. I checked our charts and calculated that there were 2 small islands a few hundred kilometers to the east. One of them, Isle Amsterdam, was a French scientific base. Our only hope was to reach this pinpricks in the vast ocean. But unless the wind and seas abated so we could hoist sail, our chances would be slim indeed. The great wave had put our auxiliary engine out of action. In this paragraph, smashed it means badly broken. Kill it means still structure along the base of the ship. Pinpricks it means a prick caused by a pin. Pinpricks in the vast ocean it means the 2 small islands in the vast ocean were very tiny like the prick caused by a pin. Abated it means something unpleasant to become less intense. Auxiliary engine it means a small secondary engine used to board ships to operate a windlass in the ship. In this paragraph, the water level was under control by the morning of January 3rd, so all of them took 2 hours rest in rotation. But there still was a leak somewhere below the waterline. Upon checking, the boat rib structure was badly broken down till the base of the ship. The whole section of starboard was held together with a few cupboard partitions. The ship's condition was so bad that it would not make it till Australia. The narrator checked the charts and calculated that there were 2 small islands a few kilometers to the east. One of them was Isle Amsterdam, which was a French scientific base. Their only hope was to search and reach that island. but only if the wind and the sea do not cause further damage, else their chances were slim. The wave had destroyed the ship's auxiliary engine. Now the next paragraph. On January 4th, after 36 hours of continuous pumping, we reached the last few centimeters of water. Now we had only to keep pace with the water still coming in. We could not set any sail on the main mast. Pressure on the rigging would simply pull the damaged section of the hull apart, so we hoisted the storm jib and headed for where I thought the two islands were. Mary found some corned beef and cracker biscuits, and we ate our first meal in almost 2 days. But our respite was short-lived. At 4 p.m., black clouds began building up behind us. Within the hour, the wind was back to 40 knots and the seas were getting higher. The weather continued to deteriorate throughout the night, and by dawn on January 5th, our situation was again desperate. In this paragraph, rigging, it means the ropes and wires supporting the structure of the ship. Hull, it means the framework of the vessel. Respite, it means a short period of rest. Deteriorate, it means get worse. In this paragraph, after 36 hours of continuous pumping, on January 4th, the water was only a few centimeters left to be pumped out. But they still had to pump out the water which was coming in. They could not set sail on the main mast. They hoisted the storm jib and sailed towards the two small islands. They had their first meal in 2 days, some corned beef and cracker biscuits found by Mary. The rest period was short-lived as black cloud built up around 4 p.m. The wind was now 40 knots and the sea was getting higher. The weather got worse, and by the early morning of January 5th, the situation was bad. Now the next paragraph. When I went in to comfort the children, John here means Jonathan. John asked, "Daddy, are we going to die?" I tried to assure him that we could make it. "But Daddy," he went on, "we aren't afraid of dying if we can all be together. You and Mummy, Shu and I." I could find no words with which to respond, but I left the children's cabin determined to fight the sea with everything I had. To protect the weakened starboard side, I decided to heave to, with the undamaged port hull facing the oncoming waves, using an improvised sea anchor of heavy nylon rope and two 22-liter plastic barrels of paraffin. That evening, Mary and I sat together holding hands as the motion of the ship brought more and more water in through the broken planks. We both felt the end was very near. In this paragraph, heave to, it means to raise or lift with effort. Paraffin, it means colorless, flammable oil liquid. In this paragraph, when the narrator went to comfort his children, his son asked him whether they were going to die. He tried to assure him that they would make it. His son replied that they were not afraid to die till they all were together. This filled the narrator with a determination to fight back. He made effort to protect the weakened starboard side. He used an improvised sea anchor made of heavy nylon rope and two 22-liter plastic barrels of kerosene. That same evening, the narrator and his wife sat holding hands, and they believed that their end was near. Now the next paragraph. But Wave Walker rode out the storm, and by the morning of January 6, With the wind easing, I tried to get a reading on the sextant back in the chart room. I worked on wind speeds, changes of courses, drift and current in an effort to calculate our position. The best I could determine was that we were somewhere in 150,000 kilometers of ocean looking for a 65-kilometer wide island. While I was thinking, Shu moving painfully joined me. The left side of her head was now very swollen and her blackened eye narrowed to slits. She gave me a card she had made. On the front, she had drawn caricatures of Mary and me with the words, "Here are some funny people. Did they make you laugh?" I laughed a lot as well. Inside was a message, "Oh, how I love you both." So this card is to say thank you and let's hope for the best. Somehow we had to make it. In this paragraph, sextant, it means an instrument with graduate arc of 60 degrees for taking altitudes and navigation. Caricatures, it means picture of a person, it means a cartoon. In this paragraph, the ship made it through the storm and by the morning of January 6, the narrator tried to get reading on the sextant. He worked with wind speeds, drift and current and calculated their position. They were in 150,000 kilometers area of ocean looking for a 65-kilometer wide island. While the narrator was still thinking, his daughter Shu joined him and she was in pain. The left side of her head was swollen and her blackened eyes had narrowed down to slits. She gave him a card which she had made herself. On the front of the card was a cartoon image of her parents with words written about them being funny people and how they made her laugh. On the inside of the card, she told them how she loved them both and she thanked them. This made the narrator realize that they had to make it to the island. Now the next paragraph, I checked and rechecked my calculation. We had lost our main compass and I was using a spare which had not been corrected for magnetic variation. I made an allowance for this and another estimate of the influence of the westerly currents which flow through this part of the Indian Ocean. About 2 p.m., I went on deck and asked Larry to steer a course of 185 degrees. If we were lucky, I told him with a conviction I did not feel, he could expect to see the island at about 5 p.m. Then, with a heavy heart, I went below, climbed on my bunk and amazingly dozed off. When I woke, it was 6 p.m. and growing dark. I knew we must have missed the island, and with the sail we had left, we couldn't hope to beat back into the westerly winds. At that moment, a tousled hat appeared by my bunk. "Can I have a hug?" Jonathan asked. Shu was right behind him. In this paragraph, tousled hat, it means disarranged hair of the narrator's son, Jonathan. Bunk, it means bed. B-E-D, bed. Dozed off, it means went off to sleep. In this paragraph, the narrator rechecked his calculation. They lost their main compass and were using the spare one which was not corrected for magnetic variation. He estimated the influence of the westerly currents which was flow through the Indian Ocean. Around 2 p.m., he went on deck and asked Larry to steer the wheel to 185 degrees. He left if they were lucky. they would see the island by 5 pm. Then he went below and slept. He woke up around 6 pm and it was dark outside. He thought that they might have missed the island. He started worrying about how they would tackle the westerly wind more, as the ship wasn't capable to sail more. His son came and asked him for a hug. His daughter followed. Now the next lines. Why am I getting a hug now? I asked. Because you are the best daddy in the whole world and the best captain, my son replied. Not today, John. I am afraid. Why? You must be, said Shue in a matter-of-fact voice. You found the island. What? I shouted. It's out there in front of us, they chorused, as big as a battleship. I rushed on deck and gazed with relief at the stark outline of Isle Amsterdam. It was only a bleak piece of volcanic rock with little vegetation, the most beautiful island in the world. In this paragraph, bleak it means an area of land lacking vegetation. Stark it means sharply defined. In this paragraph, he asked that why was he getting a hug? His son replied that he was the best daddy in the world and also called him the best captain. The narrator replied that he was afraid. Shue told him then that they had found the island which was as big as a battleship. The narrator rushed to the deck and gave a sigh of relief. They could see the complete outline of Isle Amsterdam. There was a bleak piece of volcanic rock in front of them. It had a little vegetation. It was the most beautiful island in the world. Now the next paragraph. We anchored offshore for the night, and the next morning all 28 inhabitants of the island cheered as they helped us ashore. With land under my feet again, my thoughts were full of Larry and Herbie, cheerful and optimistic under the direst stress, and of Mary, who stayed at the wheel for all those crucial hours. Most of all, I thought of a 7-year-old girl who did not want us to worry about a head injury, which subsequently took 6 minor operations to remove a recurring blood clot between skin and skull, and of a 6-year-old boy who was not afraid to die. In this paragraph, anchored it means moor a ship to the sea bottom. Offshore it means situated at the sea some distance from the shore. Ashore it means on the shore of the land. Optimistic it means hopeful and confident. In this paragraph, they moored the ship at some distance from the shore at the next morning, and the 28 inhabitants of the Amsterdam island helped them to move on the shore of the land. As he felt the land again on his feet, he thought of his crewman and his wife. He also thought of his 7-year-old daughter who was injured badly. She had to go through 6 minor operations to remove the blood clot in her head. His son who never gave up and was not afraid to die. So our second chapter, We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together by Gordon Cook and Alan East is completed over here. Thank you.